Gonna be great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and Kevin Nunes behind the camera. But more importantly, Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it is Major League Baseball opening day. Mets open at 4 o'clock against the Miami Marlins. No question about it, Tony. I am ready to be heard again.
This is the year of the Mets, the year of the tight end. And that's about it. Just those two things.
So
it's going to be a good year one way or the other. We are here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, as you guys can tell if you're watching live. Got done talking to the defensive backs, bunch of safeties, bunch of corners. Talked to Tim Walton, Perry Eliano. Good day. It was our first opportunity of talking to Davison Igbinosun, the transfer from Ole Miss, and Jihad Carter, the transfer from Syracuse. Got to talk to Josh Proctor for the 6th year in a row, so that's good. And what I want to start out with, Tom, is about Josh Proctor, and this is something I asked basically everybody, all of the players. Do you know when the last time Josh Proctor? I didn't ask everybody this. When was the last time Josh Proctor played in the same defense 2 years in a row?
The same
defensive system.
Well, there were 2 years of Kerry Combs. Does that count?
What happened? Well, 1 year they tried to run Hafley's system for a few weeks and it didn't work, and then they scrapped that. And the next year they tried to run it a little bit something different. But what he told me, Tom,
high school,
7 years.
Yeah,
high school, probably like junior and senior year of high school.
Because you had the 2018 Greg Schiano, the 2019 Hafley, and if you're not counting the 2 Combs years as the same, and then you've got Knowles. So, that's how has that constant change gone? Has it been good?
Tom, it has not been good. And Josh Proctor's like, yeah, it's the first time in like 7 years, and I'm playing a new position. So like he's playing, he'll take that getting to play free safety, which he likes. But that was something I went around asking everybody. What's it like finally playing in the same defense? Because basically for the first time in everybody we've talked to's career, because Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock, those are guys in their 3rd year. Are there any seniors other than Proctor right now? Cam Martinez is a 3rd-year sophomore. Talk to him, and the thing about it is, Tom, when you do something more than once, and you get to do it often, and you're doing the same defense 2 years in a row, you don't spend as much time learning and worrying about mistakes and making mistakes. You know what you're doing, and you're able to play faster, and you're able to learn more. And as Perry Eliano told me, you can talk, you can converse about this on a level you couldn't before.
Yeah, and that's that continuity just makes it so much easier. You don't have to have the 101 level class again. You don't need to have a 201 level class. You can jump right into the upperclassmen level stuff with guys who've been here before. And the true freshmen who show up, guess what? They have to go back to the 101 level. But then you don't just have, when you have a 2nd year in a system or a 3rd year in a system, heaven forbid there's a 3rd year in a system. If you have a 2nd or 3rd year in a system, then all of a sudden you have what was the Tanner McAllister effect last year, where you don't just have to talk to the coaches because the players understand it too. Tanner McAllister, it was his 2nd year in Jim Knowles' system because he had played for him at Oklahoma State before that, but no one else knew that. Now the guys who played corner last year can teach the young guys too, because they are starting to understand it. The game's starting to slow down for them. And it's, there's that old analogy about, if you can talk about something that demonstrates you have some kind of understanding, but if you can teach it, like if you can teach the class on something that understands you really have a mastery of the subject, that's where it feels like this team might be maybe starting to head.
Yeah, and that's what Eliano was saying. Is like they can articulate what they're doing in the defense, and they know the whys. Why did they make that mistake? They know why. Last year was, I know I made a mistake, and I know what it was.
I can tell because there's a guy with a football in the end zone. Yeah.
But now they know why they made a mistake, how to fix it. One of the things you hear about newcomers that coaches love is when you tell them what they've done wrong, they look at it on film and they fix it the next time. You're able to do that the more you know this defense, and then eventually there become fewer problems and things just run like you want, and that's what they're trying to get to. And we'll see if the pass rush can help out the secondary, but we continue to see things that make us think the secondary is going to be an improvement from last year, I think.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm going through the list of things that make me think the secondary is going to be improved from last year, I think the first thing on that list is the stuff we keep hearing about Denzel Burke. Because I didn't talk to Denzel Burke at all, but I heard about Denzel Burke a bunch during those interviews. And I think it was Jordan Hancock, but someone was saying, yeah, he's just in the building at like 5 a.m. every day, just watching film. Like he's just, because we've kind of heard that a couple times this spring from different folks. And he just feels like, I've made this analogy before, but you go back to the J.K. Dobbins career path where you're starting a somewhat surprising starting true freshman game one. Burke did that. J.K. Dobbins said that. They had, pretty solid freshman years, which then you're thinking, oh boy, where could this be going in a year or two? And then the sophomore years were kind of okay, but it's maybe a little bit of a step back, or at least the trajectory did not take off like you were expecting it to. It was a little more of a flatter trajectory. And then the third year, J.K. Dobbins shows up in the spring, and it was like all you heard from anyone you talked to was, oh man, J.K. Dobbins. Oh man, J.K. Dobbins. And he had changed his diet, he changed his workout routine, he changed his focus, everything. You're starting to get that same conversation around Denzel Burke a lot. And you saw what happened with J.K. Dobbins. So my question for you, Tony, will Denzel Burke rush for 2,000 yards this season?
Only one person has ever done it. I can't remember who it was, but it's a tall order. I do remember the first time we ever talked to Denzel Burke, and I just came away thinking that dude is very serious. Mm-hmm. And this was, as a true freshman, like this is a very serious guy. And so you see the struggles that he had early on last year. You knew that wasn't going to sit well with him. And he's been very determined to just go out the right way. This is being, a contract year, junior year. You're running around talking to different guys. I'm guessing just about all of them that were here last year are talking about something to prove, last year leaving a bad taste. There's a lot of reason to want to fix what happened last year, and being a year older and in the same defense 2 years in a row, they're very capable of doing so. You just wonder, I think really my question is more of the safeties, is the overall skill there to do that. Because I feel pretty good about the corners, especially now with Davis and Igbinosun, and we can get into him a little bit. I think, but my question is, are there NFL safeties on this defense? And do you need NFL safeties to win a national title? Because, look at Georgia, Christopher Smith, their starting safety is probably going to be like a fourth or fifth rounder, maybe something like that. So, you can do it with Von Bell and Tyvis Powell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, I don't think you look at the talent level coming in of the guys we're talking about at safety for Ohio State. Sonny Styles is right now second string at Bandit, but he was a 5-star. Ahead of him, you've got Lathan Ransom, who was a top 100 type player, who was, again, kind of on that immediately got on the field in 2020. True freshman, that weird 2020 season, and he was out there against Alabama in the national championship game at times. And so, you kind of have the athletic pedigree there, and now you've got guys in the second year in this defense, in the second year in this system, and for Ransom, his fourth year now. Mm-hmm. So, these are guys who should be ready to really contribute. Remind me to talk later about Lathan Ransom and what he's done to sort of bulk up for his role as the Bandit. You've got Josh Proctor, who came in as a very highly touted guy, both in terms of recruiting rankings, and also you retweeted something or had a quote from Damon Arnett about just, how incredibly rangy Josh Proctor was. And this is 2018. And, so now he's been around this defense a lot, and he's maybe in more of his natural position. Again, he was someone who you saw in that spot. He played in the 2019 Fiesta Bowl against Clemson. Very early in his career, he was someone who they had out there because he's athletic and can make plays. And again, you get up to speed on that defense. And then, then the other safety spot is the nickel. And then you got Ken Martinez, you got Jahad Carter. How does that play out? We have I assume, super chat.
Super chat from Steve Buckholz. Here's a start for a new device. Love you guys. I was talking about our live view starting to crap out a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we welcome Steve Buckholz back to the show.
Well, thank you, Steve Buckholz, who was part of our live audience for one of our pregame shows last year outside the stadium. Glad Kevin is rattling the tin cup in the comments. But thank you, Steve. We really appreciate it. So, you have Cam Martinez, you've got Jihad Carter there at that nickel spot. That feels like that's kind of the question mark. Who are they? And you've got, Cam Martinez. I say Cam Martinez, and everyone I think is going to go, well, did you see the thing against Michigan? He's terrible. And it's like, okay, number one, that was one play. Number two, we have sort of come to find out that Cam Martinez was banged up all year last year. So you weren't playing at 100%. So that's one of the reasons he probably wasn't on the field as much. And Jihad Carter was a 3-year starter at Syracuse, made a bunch of impact plays. And so now you have a guy who hasn't played a lot. You have a guy who hasn't played a lot at Ohio, hasn't played at all at Ohio State. Okay, let's see where that goes. It feels like you potentially have two players who are good enough to get to where you need to if they reach their potential this year.
Yeah, and I asked Cam Martinez about being in the same defense 2 years in a row. He's like, I was just talking to my family about it the other day. Like, this is so nice. Yeah, you're familiar with everything. You know what you're doing. You don't feel lost. You're kind of like not reaching out for help from everybody because you're able to stay above water and do pretty well with it. Jair Brown has been working at nickel a little bit as well. Ryan Turner, we saw in a scrimmage working at nickel. So Jair Brown was talking about that. Just obviously do whatever. And I'll be interested to see exactly why or when they decide to use more corners in that 3 cornerback look. To me, it would just be a dime look where it's like 3rd and 19 or something like that. And you're like, oh, let's throw a 3rd corner out there because I think you brought Jihad Carter to be the nickel. Cam Martinez is a 4th-year player now.
You said 3rd-year sophomore earlier, but I think he's a 4th-year junior. Yeah.
So, this will obviously be the best version of himself. Mm-hmm. And he started games, I think, each of the last 2 years, here and there, like 1 or 2 games. And 1 year in 2020, one game 2022, like as a deep safety at some point. And they're trying to find places for him. So, you move him all around. High school quarterback. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the best he's ever been. So you're going to have to give him a chance. And obviously he's been running with the ones for the most part as Jihad Carter learns the defense. But I think they'll be okay there because they've got enough guys to where you've recruited well at corner. And if you need to slide somebody over, you've got some options now. Then that takes away. I think they feel, we've been saying, I think they feel good about their 4 corners. Mm-hmm. But if you take one of those guys away, then three is a little scary at times.
Yeah, and we saw how deep you can get on that depth chart at a position last year at corner, where it was just constantly just guys going down. Cam Brown's hurt this week. Oh, Jordan Hancock's been out for the first 6 weeks of the season, and that's how you end up with true freshman Jair Brown starting against Wisconsin in week 3 or 4 or whatever that was, and that was oh boy, that's. And he did fine. And that's one of those things that pays off now. Okay, now you've kind of gotten thrown into the fire a little bit. You've had to do it, and you learn by doing, and you learn by having film to teach off of. To learn from, for people to say, okay, it's great to learn from the mistakes someone else has made. It's way better to learn from the mistakes you've made because then it's like, hey, now I'm not going to do that again. I remember doing that, and I'm not going to do that again. So yeah, and they're healthy this spring. Everyone's healthy, and. Obviously it matters a lot more if they're healthy in September than in March. But, someone like Jordan Hancock, he got hurt in fall camp last year, had that hamstring injury, and just never got back to 100%. And he talked about how frustrating that was, where you're ready to go. You had your first season, okay, and now your second season, you're getting talked up as a potential starter, at least at the very least a rotational guy there. And then you get hurt. And then you miss fall camps. You're missing all that time. And then the season's going on, and week after week, you're not ready to go. You're not quite 100%. And he was never really 100% last year. So, he's another one where I think people looked at him at the end of last year and went, bust. And it's like, yeah, let's be a little more patient, because if you're not 100% at any point, plus you've missed all that practice time, guess why he doesn't look exactly like you'd hope he does? Well, there's a couple things that go into it, and I may have just said 2 of them.
And Denzel Burke said that those 2 are pushing each other because, I'm sure they heard plenty of hype about their class, their cornerback class. One of them is already gone, J.K. Johnson. And then they had their struggles last year, so boom, immediately they get written off, and there's clearly more to their story. How much were you with Davis and Igbinosun? Because I was only over there a little bit. I saw somebody asked him why Ohio State, and he said, "I want to be a first-round draft pick," and that's really like, why would you come here and compete when you could just start anywhere else pretty easily? And it was about wanting to play at the best places against the best receivers, and ultimately be a first-round NFL draft pick. And so, he's both him and Jihad Carter, from talking to Tim Walton, Perry Aliano, like those guys have not said one word, in terms of like they're not saying boo. They're basically just putting their heads down, going to work, doing everything you could want a transfer to do, and that's always the best way of fitting in, because these guys that come in to take somebody's job, take somebody who I've been here for 3 years, you're coming to take my job. I am going to shun you. At lunch, you are not sitting at our table, that's for sure. But these guys just do the work, and then eventually, like, the players see it and you start to respect it, and you go from there.
Well, and that's exactly it. You gotta, this is one of the old cliche that respect is earned, not given. You don't just walk in and go, okay, here I am, the king of the world. That's not. You got to show up. You got to put in the work, because everyone else got to the point that they were by putting in the work. There are no shortcuts at this level. If you want to, if you want to take shortcuts, there are plenty of levels below this. Yeah. If you want to get to the NFL level, guess what's going to happen when you make the NFL? There is some hotshot rookie who's coming in, or some free agent, or whoever who's coming in to take your job every year. Mm-hmm. You can't be complacent. Complacency doesn't get you anywhere.
Speaking of.
Super chat, Jordan Kapler. Here's some cash for your lunch order. 5 for Tom and 5 for Tony and Kevin. Oh, darn. I guess I'm all out. Next time I'll pay for your BK meal. Pinky promise.
Thank you to Jordan Kapler for that Jordan super chat. Kapler. And thank you for dividing that up, I think, very equitably.
Yes. 5 for me, 5 for you.
Mm-hmm. And we're done.
And 10 for the group. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Everyone working hard on camera gets a share of it. We appreciate it, Jordan. Thank you.
The talent is where the money goes.
Absolutely.
Basically.
Absolutely.
I'm just waiting for a reaction from Kevin.
No,
he's busy.
Nothing. He probably can't hear us.
Oh, he's putting something very smart in the group chat there. Probably.
I'm responding to a lot of questions about Ohio State and Michigan already, because this is an Ohio State show. So it's just having fun there.
Questions about Ohio State and Michigan.
No, Ryan Day will not be fired if Ohio State loses.
No.
So I don't know if that's been asked, but I'm sure it has.
We talked earlier about the benefits of continuity of having Jim Knowles here for a second year and the second year of this defense. And I think that's something that's worth talking about here for a minute in the context of Ohio State gave up a first down, fire everyone. Because it's very easy. And that's the Message Board Geniuses Twitter account has anytime, 3 times a day, they do the screenshots of the message board and all they tweet at is #fire everyone. And it's like, Kentucky's down 6 points in basketball in the first half, fire everyone. You have to be a little bit patient. And, Ryan Day has had overall a lot of success at Ohio State, but they will tell you they haven't hit their goals. When you're kind of bumping right up against those goals, you probably need to be a little bit patient, because if you pull the trigger and you switch, the schools that are firing coaches every 3 years, those are the ones that never get better. And, I think there's a benefit to just having that continuity in terms of recruiting, in terms of personnel and development, in terms of not having 25 guys enter the portal and having to start your roster over.
Maybe follow Michigan's example.
There is an example in the Big Ten of a school that took quite a while, and, that school has gotten to a level that they hadn't in the past 20 years, where they've beaten Ohio State a couple of years in a row. They've won a couple Big Ten championships. They haven't gotten to the level after that. They're losing bowl games every year. So, okay, is this a Bo Schembechler tribute? I don't, maybe it is, but do you need to fire Jim Harbaugh because, well, he hasn't won a bowl game. He hasn't won in the, there's always another step. There's always someone better than you. And, I think Auburn is completely insane for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that Auburn is completely insane is because you're trying to compete with Nick Saban. And if you're trying to compete with the greatest ever, that is a hard threshold to get yourself over. And sometimes patience, I'm gonna coin a phrase here, never said before.
All right.
Patience sometimes is a virtue.
Interesting. Can you say that in Latin?
Probably.
Not on camera. I do think there's an interesting comparison there because Auburn tries to compete with Nick Saban, and you can't, but they can beat Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan can beat Ohio State, but can they compete with Ohio State? Actually, they haven't.
Well,
so.
yeah, but I mean, I think there's also, there's Michigan has been a little more consistent than Auburn in terms of them being able to actually win the Big Ten, where Auburn hasn't won the SEC in a hot minute. But there are some, there are still some similarities there where there are hurdles that Michigan hasn't been able to get over, and we've talked about, Michigan is right now at a spot where they can beat Ohio State, but I don't think they can win the 2 games to win the national championship. They're at that station of the sport right now, and that's pretty good. And
for them, that's great.
Well, and if they got if they got TCU in the final, if they got the TCU in the final that Georgia got, then they probably do beat them. But you got to beat whoever's first. So that road only gets harder now. Michigan seems like they're going to be right now, assuming nothing changes, they are a team that's going to consistently make the 12-team playoff and maybe win a game, but you're probably not going to be able to win. They probably don't have the talent and the depth to win the 3 games that you might need to win, or potentially even 4.
Did you just say like Michigan loosened the lid on TCU for Georgia? Is that what you said? Is that what?
I think that I think having a week for TCU to prepare for Georgia versus a month for TCU to prepare for, and the talent. I mean, do we need to relitigate the talent difference between TCU and Georgia and Ohio State? I mean,
no.
Anyway.
I want to talk about Sonny Styles.
We should do that
because just you look at the potential, and you're like, let's just get to the potential right now.
Mm.
And so I asked him about. Do you want to show everything you can do? He's like, I want to show I'm reliable at what they ask me to do, and I want to be good at what I want to be good at one thing and good at the next thing. Mm-hmm. And now something Perry Aliano says, like, we got to get him great at what we ask him to do. And so this year is probably more of a specialist role because he's playing behind Lathan Ransom. I don't expect him to beat Lathan Ransom out as that boundary safety, but we know he's going to be out there in whatever role, and it's not just finding those roles, but then once you do, making him great at that. And so it's interesting to me that he's definitely on the same page with the coaches. Also, one of the TV reporters said, "Hey, Sonny, were you a little upset about the Pickerington Central loss in the high school playoffs?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was thinking, like, he could be playing in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his second year at Ohio State, and he could be playing in that game. And it's and so that you think about that, it's like, you know what, let's just, obviously we're expecting a lot from Sonny. Everybody wants to see what he can do. But don't forget that he could be, he could have been playing high school basketball this month.
Yes, and I think he's someone where the expectations, the hype has gotten out a little bit in front. I think he's someone who has a role this fall. And I think that's something that you've heard from the coaches and you've sort of seen. He's not necessarily going to be, the Bednarik Award winner this year. It's just, this is someone who is in his second year, and he's in the second year of the defense, and I'm sure he's going to be substantially better in another year. He's had an off season with Coach Mick and all of that kind of stuff, but you got to be a little bit patient. We constantly, every time we talk about Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks, there's constantly comments.
They need to start.
That they have to start. It's like, there's a better chance that Sonny Styles starts than CJ Hicks, because Sonny Styles is kind of one injury away from potentially being the first stringer right now. But he's also someone who, he's going to be on the field more than CJ Hicks probably. But it feels like those guys are kind of linked in a way where they're looking for a way to get CJ Hicks on the field. And we've talked about him potentially as the jack. They're looking for a way to get Sonny Styles on the field. And it's probably not going to be 65 snaps a game. But if you can get him on the field for 20, 25, and then, maybe sometimes that's 40, maybe sometimes that's 50. And for Hicks, maybe sometimes that's 5, or sometimes that's 15. But they are aware. They are aware that these are good football players, and they are aware that good football players help your football team be better. So you're going to see them but you also have to be patient because you don't want, if you throw a guy out there before he's really ready, that bad things happen.
I think all of these guys you're trying to find roles for, you need to show them Mike Hall against Michigan State last year, 8 snaps, and see what he did. Like, you can change a game in 8 snaps as long as, they're good. Or you can also change them if they're bad. Kevin, do we have any questions?
We have a couple. Jordan Kapler, what's your go-to order from Sheets?
Oh, you know what? Well, here's the thing. Sheets is so new that I don't have a go-to order, but in the morning I will get they have some pretty good, I get a steak burrito, throw a little bacon on that burrito, some jalapenos in there. Burgers are fine. I still haven't done the steak subs though.
Yeah, I've done the steak sub. The steak sub is not bad. My kids love the appetizer sampler with like mac and cheese bites and mozzarella sticks and that kind of stuff. That's always a good choice.
Yes.
Kind of leading off our Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, Justin Courtney, going to be secondary problems on November 25th when JJ is lighting them up again.
Well, I mean, that's entirely possible if he's getting out from the contain and making plays. I mean, that will happen to the best of defenses. But, again, I'll just go back to his second year in the defense. The coaches have learned as much as the players have learned. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things Perry Aliano says. Like, I know who can do what and who can't. Like, I know my players and what they can and can't do. And last year, you're learning stuff. I mean, look at how much they learned and how long it took them to learn that. You know what? Maybe Jack Sawyer shouldn't be playing the Jack. Mm-hmm. It took a freaking year. Mm-hmm. So now they'll continue to learn stuff in fall camp about who can do this and who can do that. But they know so much more than they did a year ago, because what Jim Knowles was learning last year, leading up to the season, was based on what he had seen in another defense from players.
Yeah, and this is a year where everyone has to replace players, and Ohio State does that generally. I mean, they'll do it much more through recruiting and then a little bit of transfer portal. Michigan's been a little heavier on the transfer portal. They've got a lot of guys back. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be they're going to be leaning on that offensive line and that running game a lot. I don't think that you're necessarily leaning on the passing game unless they need to. And that's I think if you look through the last 2 years of that Michigan offense, that game was a real outlier in terms of downfield passing. So, maybe they can do it again.
They should be confident they're playing the same defense. Like, not only is Ohio State playing the same defense, like Michigan is playing that same Ohio State defense. Yep. So why wouldn't they be confident? Yep. Anything else that you heard? I think we're good with questions. So,
okay. I think that probably covers most of it. Kevin and I are going to do a morning show talking about a bunch of stuff. So if I've forgotten anything, we'll talk about it on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning episode that'll drop on Thursday afternoon.
I don't want to say it's doubtful that you forgot anything, but I also don't want to say, so you're just going to be repeating yourself in that show. So we'll just say it's not the exact same show. It's different. Plus, Kevin. You can sell Kevin. So the selling point is Kevin's on the morning show.
Least downloaded episode ever. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So our solemn promise to you, Kevin, will try out some Italian on that show. So you have that to look forward to.
Does he talk with his hands?
Yeah, obviously. Yes.
All right. We got to get out of here. I want to thank you all for joining us. As always, you can become a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Say hello to us there on the Huddle message board. You can continue to find us at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And, of course, all of your podcast platforms of choice. We are wherever you need us, whenever you need us. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.